Welcome to the Fabled Academy. We are here at the Calling Utrecht Day 2 with Sebastian Grondal. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's been a whole ride this weekend for you. Starting off Friday with the European Champions Battle, where you actually took the win home to Denmark.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about you.
So I started playing like about a year ago actually, because we the game came to Denmark in late 2020, and then like mid 2021, like when Monarch came out, we started playing at the store, right? And it's been a really great game since then. We started like going to like the first Road to Nationals in Denmark, and then the Nationals, which was really fun too. And then when they announced that they were gonna do the callings, we were planning to go to Utrecht when they first announced it, but it got cancelled. So we went to Krakow, and now we're here in Utrecht. So yeah, I'm just really stoked to be here. I'm a little bummed out right now because I missed top 8 barely in the main event after having a really poor day 2 draft, but otherwise it's been a great weekend.
Awesome. Yeah. What has been your experience before the calling here? You were in Krakow too?
Yeah, exactly. I played the main event there, which was Blitz, and I played young Katsu, in a Viserai gridded meta, and I did fairly okay. I went 7-3 there day 1 with an off meta deck, and then day 2 I went 1-1, and then I decided to drop because I knew I couldn't make top 8 to go play in the Battle Horde there, which was limited as well. And then I top 8'd there, and then won the whole tournament with Katsu in the top 8.
Awesome. Yeah, man, you had a blast this weekend, and just like tell us a little bit more about your deck. What hero were you playing?
Yeah, so when they did the profile at Krakow, right? They gave me like a slip of paper, and they were asking like all these sorts of questions. What are my favorite cards? What am I looking to see? And I was saying I want to see more Ninja, and they delivered in Uprising, that's for sure. So we have Fire Uprising here, a little nice cold foil, and a cold foil Searing Emberblade as well. This is just the mainstay of the deck. I've seen people play the Kadachis. I just don't see it working in the deck. You don't get enough for it. I see it more as when I think of these two cards, right? I think of them as this one costs 2 for 3 damage. The other weapons cost 2 for 2 damage. It's just simply not worth it to downgrade your weapon damage for longer combat chains. This one is just more efficient. It's just better in Fi. So you should mostly be playing the Searing Emberblade unless you have a really good reason to play the other weapons. But that's the hero and the weapon, right? And then the idea of the deck is in general that we were experimenting with an OTK version. One of my other friends, a guy called Peter, he was doing an OTK version at first, where he played energy potions and all sorts of things to do with these crazy turns with Phoenix Form. But I was doing what I call the no BS version, where you just try to have good turns every turn and put pressure on, no matter what. And we came to realize that both decks had sort of good matchups against different things. So the no BS Fi was kind of alright at also defeating the Bravo players who were putting pressure on and trying to disrupt your hand, where the OTK version was really, really good at racing other aggro decks. So I tried to build a list where I could combine the two into one and have a sideboard that was sort of transformational. And so if we try to go through the main package of the list, we have as the core.
Yeah, first I think before you show the core, show us your equipment.
Shows the equipment. Okay, so we have these 8 equipments that are available in the deck. The tunic, flame scale, mask, tiger, hammers, links, and blossom and tide flippers.
Oh yeah.
And interestingly, what you will notice here is there is no Snapdragon scalers, because I don't play Snatch in the deck. I did used to play Snatch in the other version, my no BS version, but I found that if I wanted my transformational sideboard here, there was no room to play the Snatch and the Snapdragon scalers. And I wanted to make my deck really good against the Viserais and the Briars, so I always wanted to play this one in my deck, to make sure I had the one Arcane Barrier, and then to make sure that I could play 2 finishers on a combo turn. And we'll get to see those finishers later. And then I just cut the Snapdragon Skiller Chests and the Snatches and just saved those sideboard slots so I could have something else in there. So I just ended up always playing these.
Oh, really?
Yeah, always playing these. Yeah. And there are situations where I would have liked to have the Snapdragon Skillers and the Snatches, but I just didn't have enough space in the sideboard. so I opted to not play them, and it seemed to work out fine. Then I have the Blossom. This is the really interesting card. Like, you're looking at these two cards, right? And you're going, why would you not just play Tunic? And the idea is, when you're playing a really, really aggressive matchup, right? You're playing against Briar. You have turn 2 to turn 4, so to go off. So if you give them the start, they're starting, then you have your turn 1. And then you might have your turn 1 hand, attack with 3 cards, put a card in the arsenal. And then on your turn 2, you might want to go off that turn and deal your massive explosive damage turn. And if you don't have your Tunic counter to do that turn, that might cost you the game. So that's why we're playing Blossom in the deck list here. And this is actually a late add-on. We used to also experiment with Vest, because Vest adds 2 resources, but we found that this one is especially good in the deck because it allows you to Art of War or Belittle off it without having to hit anything in the start of the turn. That allows you to come up with no blue hands, and that was really important for the deck. And the Tunic allows the same thing, but you have to get to turn 3 before this works. So we opted just to remove the 1 block and just play this instead. The Tunic does have matchups though. Playing it against Ultim, for example, where the game is going long and you just have to grind them out. So there you would play the Tunic. So there are matchups where you would play the Tunic, also Icelander for example. So we do have the Tunic in the deck for those matchups. Then we have the rest of the 5 equipments over here. We have these 2 that have the same slot, and we have these here. These 2 equipments, they're for the OTK version. So when you're playing against other race matchups, I play these, and then these 2 over here. This is the setup. Then everything is just about killing your opponent. We'll get to see some of those combo turns when I lay out the deck a little later. But that's the whole idea. And then for the games where you can just play grindy long games, you play these and just Tide Flippers. Or against Ultim, for example, you would play something weird like this. Yeah. But the games where you can go longer and you don't have to win immediately, you are allowed to just play these and just take it long. For example, Prism. The only dangerous thing that Prism can do to you is play Herald of Erudition and draw 2 cards. And if you just make sure that you stop that by having armor block equipments, they can't really do anything against you, because you threaten drawing cards every turn, they have to block. And then if you just make sure that their most important heralds don't hit, they can't do anything, because you can also clear an aura every turn because you have the Phoenix Flame. So they have a really tough matchup against you if you just play it safe and play it long. But that's basically the setup for the equipment. You have the OTK versions, and you have some tech equipments that are good against different matchups.
Oh, I'm stuck to see the main deck.
Alright, so when I think about building decks in Flesh and Blood, I usually think of building a semi-mount card deck, like 52, 53, 54 card deck. Then I add cards from a maybe board or like a pre-game sideboard, right? So I have a main board list here, which is 53 cards. Then I add cards from the sideboard. So I have core cards.
Can you show it the other way around?
Yes, I'll show it the other way around. 3 Spitting Flames and 3 Art of Wars. These are like the 6 most important cards in the deck. Art of Wars are what allow you to do your insane combo turns, and I'll showcase one of those later when we've seen the whole deck. And Spreading Flames is one of those cards that also allows you to do that, because you're going to get up to like 7-ish chains in a turn, and then this one will also be adding like +3 or +4 damage. So these are like the most important cards in the deck. They're absolutely crucial. Then we have all the checking boxes cards. So we have the red Gorgons, just 3 Ronin, 3 Rising Resentment, 3 Brand with Cinderclaw, 3 Lava Vein Loyalty, and then the 3 Blazing Headlong. These are just zeros that check boxes, making sure you have Go Again all the time and you're consistent. Then we have also another starter, Mounting Anger. This is just really strong because it's 1 for 4 starter with Go Again, and when it hits you just get the +1. So you threaten more damage when it hits, and you start your combat chain with it. It's something that is completely necessary in Thai, and if you don't have enough of these in your deck doesn't work. You just need cards that can start your chain. And this one just fills that box. Then actually we're playing an interesting card here. We're playing 3 yellow Rising Resentment, and I see a lot of players really like Rise Up, and I don't like the card because it's really, really, really poor if you don't have 2 Phoenix Flames in your graveyard. And this one works without having that. Then we also found that, I mean, sometimes having a yellow card in your hand actually matters. It's not something that you generally need or use in fight, but sometimes it does matter. And this one just sort of gets in on that sweet spot where you have a little bit of one thing and you have a little bit of the other thing, and then it just ends up being the best thing for the spot. Yeah, we've done the calculations with the rise up and this card for combo turns, and this card just way outperforms that card on combo turns. If you don't have the extra Phoenix Flame in your graveyard, because then you just lose it. There's also another reason why not to play rise up, and that is if you play this when you're comboing off, then you draw 2 cards. If you draw rise up, then you can't really play that because you end your whole combat chain. So that's also a reason why not to play the rise up.
How much Storm of Firebrand do you play?
I play 2 of these.
2.
Yeah, we'll get to those. Those are in the maybe board, because you don't play these in the grindy matchups, you play them in the race matchups. Yeah, so we'll get to those in just a second. So yeah, these are a little bit of an interesting spot, but they just ended up being the best because they're still 0 cost and they check boxes because they just make a white combat chain. Then we have probably one of the best cards, like most used and played generic cards in the game right now, and that is just Belittle. So play 3 Belittle, and this card is just amazing in the deck as well, because as I mentioned earlier, you have the Tunic and the Blossom that you can crack at the start of a turn to get that 1 resource, and then you can play this, reveal a red card from your hand, and you can get the blue Minnowism, and then you just made a hand that was all red work with everything by doing that. So these cards just work really well together, and they sort of glue the deck together in a really good way. And then play just 1 Minnowism in the main board. I have 1 more in the maybe board for matchups where you go longer and you just need more blue resources anyways. But only play 1 of these in the main board because you can sort of play your deck around not comboing off when you have this in your hand and this in your hand at the same time. And it doesn't happen that often that you draw them both in the same hand, right? But you don't want to, and the specific reason why you don't want to is same reason as Rise Up. When you play this card and you draw 2 and you draw this, it's like discarding a card. It's like drawing a brick. So you really, really don't want that. That's why you only play 1. Then we have another box ticker in the deck. We have the finishers. So these are the general finishers. We have 3 Salt the Wound and 3 Lava Burst. So these are just meant to come at the end of a combat chain to deal a lot of damage for 1 card, being your sort of payoff card. And these work really well in really most matchups, because when you're playing the long game, then you have the Shuko, and the Shuko also pumps this when you play a Heating Flame before, which is just a really good combo. You get 1 damage extra for free, basically. And then in the other matchups, these end up being the cards you find in Mask of the Pouncing Lings. So you make your long combat chain, you find one of these cards on the Pouncing Lings, and then you have a Salt the Wound that deals like 9 damage. So this card makes these cards shine. That's really, really important for the deck. After that is really mostly all of the main deck, I think, because now we have blue cards. And for the blue cards, I have either cards that unconditionally can start the chain, like all of these zeros. These are basically just all the zeros from the reds over here. And they just start the combat chain, that's what they do, or they pitch. It's just to make the deck function and make it consistent. And then we have block 3 blue cards that can be used to block on turns where you just have 2 blue cards. You can't use both of them, you just block with 1.
Do you find it annoying to have sometimes only 2 block on a card?
I do sometimes, but it's not really that relevant because the deck is just trying to race anyways. So no, it's actually not that bad. I mean, you do find it bad sometimes. Sometimes it costs you an extra card. If you're attacking with a Command and Conquer, you only have 1 3 block in hand, and you really do have to block the Command and Conquer. That costs you an extra card. That might cost 3 damage. But that's the name of the game here, because you're playing a deck where you're racing, you're dealing a lot of damage. You can't get the best of both worlds, and that's just what Fi is. You have to attack. You have to be on the offensive, and then you just can't block that well. That's the cost for the game. But yeah, that's the main configuration here. Now let's talk about some of the configurations that you decide into, depending on where you're what you're playing against. So in the sideboard over here, we have 2 Phoenix Flames. So what you will see is I'm only playing 1 Phoenix Flame in the main board, and that was that is that's the interesting part, right? Because I really don't like this card. it's 0 for 1 go again, and it can't block. It's a really, really, really bad card, and it's not a card you just put in your deck. It's also a thing I've been doing in Limited. If I can get away with it with Fine Limited, I only play one of them, because it's a really, really bad card. It's a sort of a card that tries to tick boxes, because it's trying to make other cards work, but it just isn't worth the card alone. But I played the one in the main deck, right? And that was what my no bullshit version played as well. Just played the one and just started with that in the graveyard, and then you didn't have these 2 bad draws in your deck. But I do play 2 in the sideboard because they come in the race matchup. Then
you are the consistency king, I tell you.
Yeah. Consistency, right? Okay, so these come in the race matchup. So when you play against other Vi's, other Briars and Viserais, for example, these come in. And these are your what I call the high roll package, because you just want to do your Auto War turn and your spreading flames and your tomes, and you just want to do all of these stuff and just do like 30-40 damage in a turn. And that sounds crazy, but it's actually much more consistent than it sounds. So even before we go to anything else, let's showcase a turn like that. Because what you'll usually do is you'll arsenal either this card, you'll arsenal the Auto War, or you'll arsenal this card. And when you do that, you have one of the combo pieces to start dealing a lot of damage. So this is the best card, I would say, to arsenal. So let's say you arsenal this card, then you draw like sort of an average hand of a blue, like a Lava Burst, and this starter, and just like a tome or something. And then when you start this turn, right, you can play this of this, and then you can get rid of one of these cards. You would probably get rid of this card because you just need to make a long chain here. Then you draw 2 cards, and then let's say you draw like even just like average, like you draw this, and you draw like a fairly shitty blue card, like this. Then you can still go pop this, and then you can just pop your Blossom to make sure that you have enough resources. You have 3 resources. Then you can just start swinging. Then you can swing with this, and it has +2 from just these 2. Then you can swing with this, only has the +1. Swing with this for 3, and then you can also pay another 3 to attack with your weapon, or another 2. Or you don't want to do that. You want to just attack with the Phoenix Flame from your graveyard, and then you have 3 resources. You can play the Tome. Then you draw another 2 cards, right? And then let's just say you draw like 2 reds of something. You can also attack with these 2, right? Then at some point also during this, you crack this to go find Salt the Wound.
Dude, that's a Danish combo. Oh my god.
And then you also still have the 2 resources to attack with this. Yes. So then your chain all of a sudden just looks like all of this at the same time. And then that's just like a normal game. Some games you even high roll even more, and then you draw like 2 Art of War, or you draw like Art of War and then like the Spreading Flames as well, and then it's just even more insane. But this is like, you almost do this every game when you play with this deck. So it's really consistent and solid in that sort of way. But yeah, that was the high roll package. That was this, and more Phoenix Flames and Flame Call Awakening. This is also really good for the high roll turn, because when you do the Art of War and the stubbies, this comes down and it adds 2 chain links, because you find a Phoenix Flame in your deck, and then you added 5 damage from this, and then 3 damage from the Phoenix Flame. So it's 8 damage from 1 card.
Chilling in lava and going off.
Yeah, that's damn right. And then they were the maybe cards, or the other Phoenix Flames over there. Okay, these were the maybe cards. And then we have other cards for other matchups. So these are for Lexis. Oh, also these. All of these are for Lexis and Prisms. They all come in against Lexis and Prism, because you don't want to do the high roll package against Prism. We already established that. So you just take these safe, big poppers in that also are good at attacking against them. They just do everything against Prism. And then these cards, just to make sure you have the resources to also play these in a turn if they are not attacking with Heralds or something like that for a turn. Because you don't necessarily know if they're playing Auras or they're playing Heralds against you when you start a game. So you sort of prepare against both in that sort of way. Then you bring in the extra minnowism because you can use the extra blue there. And there are 8 cards coming in here. Yeah, then I would take out one salty one. That's what I've been doing the whole weekend. Because you're adding a lot of finishers, so you can just take out one finisher, and then that'll be all right.
Sure. You don't need that much.
Exactly. And then these cards, I also bought these cards in against Alton. These cards mostly just because I didn't want the super combo against Alton, and I needed more cards to put in, so I just needed to put something in. But these definitely going against Alton because you just need the resources. I did grind out one Alton this weekend on day 1, so that was a really good game. But yeah, if I can do that, he can really grind. And what other important matchups? We already established the racy matchups, some of the slower matchups. Bravo's important. Bravo is one of your top matchups. You bring in the Sink Belows there, and then I bring in the Commanding Conquerors, and just another blue. Because against Bravo, right, you're gonna get hit by some of those disruptive effects. You're just gonna get hit. You can't stop them all. But the name of the game there is that you just want to stop a few of them enough that you can get in with some big turns. Because you don't need very many big turns against Brower before he just collapses on himself. So you have the Sink Belows. And these are meant to generally be put into Arsenal. Then you can, on one turn where he attacks you with something like a Spinal Crush, block with a 50 card and then block with this, and then you only take 2 damage. It's not effective on you. Or you can also just only block with this and block with a 2-block equipment, which you also play against Bravo. You play all the blocking equipments. And then you are not hit by the crush effect, and you can actually attack him on your turn. So you don't need him to fail very much before you can attack him back. And that's the goal against Bravo. You need some amount of good 3 to 4 cards hand to put pressure on him. And to do that, you just need to make sure that you have some block against the dominated effects. And then against Bravo, you would also play the long game, so you would be playing these. Yeah, all of these, and then try to threaten draw a card effects of the mask, then have all of these to block something important. Yeah, so you can have a turn without crush effects.
Man, so much power.
Yeah, the deck is really it's good at pivoting against different things, and that's the power of the deck, right? You can raise aggro decks, but you can also grind out control decks, and that's like it's almost a little bit unfair in some sort of sense that you can both hedge against aggro decks and you can also hedge against control decks, and I know some of my testing partners were really they were really not happy about that because I know a guy who plays Ultim, right? And when we sat down to play this, and he was playing Ultim against it, and he just couldn't block enough or attack for enough back or anything. He just went, I can't beat this with Ultim. And that's the thing, right? He also said it's not really fair that an aggro deck gets to both outrace all the other aggro decks, but he also does not get disrupted enough by the control decks that he loses. And that's just, I think, when you build Fi right, he has that element. He can do both. But obviously not all the Fi lists online are exactly this good. Not to toot the horn of the playtest team we've been on, but it's I think this is the best Fi deck I've seen out there because it has all the elements. It fights both against control decks, it fights against aggro decks, it fights against most of those we see in the meta. I would say though, well, this is actually funny, the most feared deck I've been not wanting to see the whole weekend is Fi. It's the mirror matchup. It's the only deck I've really feared. And then the second worst matchup I would say is Bravo. But all other decks I've not been afraid of seeing. I like seeing Viscerize. Viscerai is a really, really good matchup for the deck because he just, for some reason, doesn't deal enough damage, and he doesn't quite disrupt you enough to take out your card so you can have your big turn. So you just combo him and he's just on the back foot. And Briar is sort of the same thing, unless Briar high rolls. Briar's a little bit better into this deck than Viscerai is. But both those decks are not good against this deck necessarily. It's Bravo is the worst, one of the worst matchups. But with the Sink Belows, you can win against that matchup.
And yeah, I mean we are heading now in a time where we already got a few spoilers for the next set. What would your thoughts about the next set be? Like, what do you think we will see with a deck like Fi with Uprising? What do you think the next set has in it?
Oh, the next set, like Dynasty?
Yes.
I don't remember seeing anything from that set. What are the new cards?
Yeah, we already got spoiled that the Emperor will be appearing in the set.
Yes.
So what do you think, like maybe a transition from Uprising to Dynasty will look like?
Oh, I'm not sure. I just hope they add a lot of cards for especially the underdog classes, because it's really nice to see some of the classes that are not played as much like just rise up and do a little bit better at the tournaments. But yeah, and then I also hope they do some ban and restricted announcement. This is a whole nother talk, but some ban and restricted announcement that are more frequent, because when decks pop up that need some fixing or changing, they really need to be on the spot and on the point of that. Because I think this deck is good enough, and I think my score on the weekend as well shows that, and my team that played the deck shows that this deck is not exactly fair, because it's so good against such a large variety of decks, and they need to fix these things on a regular basis. I think it would have been good to have a ban restricted announcement at the end of this month as well, because next month there's the Pro Tour and I'm going to be going to that, and I am really fearing that like 50% of the meta is going to be this fight deck, and then just people trying to beat this fight deck, and I don't think that's going to be a fun Pro Tour if that's it. So I hope they keep the pulse on that. I think the problem cards in the deck is like this card. This is a problem card in the deck, because it just deals like 7 damage alone. It's not trying to go long term, it's just trying to bait your opponent out with a quick victory, and it's not really a fun card in that sort of sense. And they banned it for Blitz, that was really correct, but it's too much for a CC even. This card is also a sort of a problem card, because this also just deals 7 damage. I think if you were to let either of these go in some sort of sense, it would be fair enough to keep the other one, but having both of them is just really problematic. But otherwise, yeah, I'm stoked to play more.
Maybe like for the last words, tell us how your experience at the European Champions Battle was like. How did it feel like to win, and how did top 8 go for you?
Well, okay, the matchups I played against was Bravo in the quarterfinals, and that was a close game. And then Phi in the semis, and well, there I just had a nuts turn, and then that was what the game was. It's a dice roll. That's what Phi is. And then in the last game I played Prism, which was a really fortunate matchup for me. So I had a really good game there. So yeah, it was really fun playing in that actually. I think like doing those sort of things where like people who place well in tournaments, they get to come and compete and sort of be an exclusive thing for those. That's really cool. And yeah, doing it for free for all the players, super great. And yeah, I think it was really good. It was a really good idea on their part.
Awesome, man. It was a pleasure to meet you here, honestly. I look forward to see you in Lille. And yeah, do you like to shout out anyone?
I would like to shout out my whole team, just going here with me, playtesting with me, picking up the deck as well to play, and it's just been really awesome. I mean, because the game is not the same if you're not playing it with your buddies and you're like going on a road trip and you're having a good time. It's just not the same. So I mean, they're the reason why we're all playing. I mean, it's the bonding, it's the teaming. So it's a shout out to my whole team: Rasmus, Jeppe, Sebastian, Jakob coming as well. Klaus sitting at home. He's the Leviathan player, so he's sitting at home. Really happy for that day 2 Leviathan. Yeah, the whole team. It's really great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian, and see you in Lille.
Yeah, thank you.